Gojko's best friend Rusty would like to come up and do the eulogy, so if I can have your attention at this time, thank you.
All right. Hi, everybody. Hope you can. Everybody hear me okay? Yeah? All right, great. Well, first off, I want to sincerely thank everybody in here for coming. I think Daisy said she counted over 300 people come up. So truly thank you so much on behalf of myself and the whole entire family here. Well, while putting these words together here, you know, I realized that I called George by his nickname. Anybody ever heard him called Sal before? Yes. Okay. I'm going to get back to that in just a little bit. There is an interesting story behind it, and I'll be sure to tell you all about it. But my intention up here, by the way, is to just share some stories about George that will hopefully make you smile, make you laugh, and probably make you tear up just a little bit. I'm going to try to do my best to hold it together up here, I promise. But, you know, my apologies in advance if I happen to lose it a couple hundred times. For those who don't know me here, allow me a brief moment to introduce myself. My name is Rusty Zion, and I'm one of George's 1,200 plus friends. Seriously. If you happen to have read his obituary, you may have also noticed that I also have the nickname Sam. Yeah, you heard that right. We both have the same nickname. If you're just hearing that for the first time, it may seem a little odd or it may seem a little out of place. I don't think I've ever met anybody that had the same nickname as somebody else who hung out together, let alone be best friends. But I'm going to tell you how that all came to be here in just a second. But before I get there, allow me to go back to the beginning of where George and I first met. It was the summer of 1982, just before the start of the 4th grade school year. E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Rocky III, and Fast Times at Ridgemont High were just released in theaters. I didn't think that was the funny part. Okay, good laughter. My family moved from the west side of Hobart, the west side of town, and as far as I'm concerned, we moved into the greatest subdivision on the planet, Glenwood subdivision.
No, you're right.
I was a new kid on the block and didn't really know anybody yet. Fate, it seems, is not without a sense of irony, as little did I know at the time, but my family had moved right next to the Blecic family. Daisy, Bronco, Zorka, Denise, I don't know where it is. And of course, George. There you are. I was 7 years old at the time, and George, I guess, would have been 8 or 9. He was about a year and a half older than me. My first memory of George was this. Shortly after we moved in, I decided to go outside in front of the cul-de-sac out in the street, and I had this little toy. It's a paratrooper toy. You may remember these, like a soldier on a string. You threw it up and like parachuted down. Probably know what I'm talking about. It's like an old toy. Maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, I was standing in the cul-de-sac throwing it up in the air, and when I began to notice the neighbor's front door start to slowly creep open. This way. I'll never forget the first time I saw him. The screen door then swings open and out walks a short, portly, round-headed, big-eared, beady-eyed kid with a big bowl haircut. Kind of like Pugsley from the Addams Family. So he wore the right normal clothes. And he began looking at me. Despite being only 7, I remember this part very vividly. From where I stood, just to kind of paint you a picture here, in the street to their front porch was roughly about 60 feet away or so. I didn't know what to make of him, So I did the only logical thing to do in this situation, at least what I thought. I proceeded to raise my hand and give my new neighbor a friendly wave. Now, he continued to look me over for a few more seconds, very suspicious-like. And for whatever reason, I suppose he thought of the only natural thing for him to do in this situation. He raised his forearm up in the air and popped up his middle finger. To tell you the truth, as God is my witness, that is exactly what I did. He knows it too. Right after that, he immediately opened back up his front door, turned around with a swift pace, walked back in the house, and slammed the door. Now, that very event I just described was the starting point of a 36-year-old friendship. Now, for the past 15 years or so, I'd always ask him about that. And I'd occasionally bring it up privately and say, you know, why the heck would you have done that? And he would always look at me with that devilish little smile that he had and say, oh, Sal, I'd never do that. No, that's complete BS. Of course I would. Anyway, that still scratched me up today, and I hope you just learned something new about him, and that's the first time we met, so I hope that brings a smile to your face. Now, for the first year I lived in the neighborhood, I didn't get to know George or really any of the Glenwood kids for that first year I lived there. I mostly stayed in touch with my old friends from across the town because my school zone was based off of my previous address on Geyer Street across town. And so they all went to a school called Ridgeview, and I went to a school called George Earl. Either way, once I finished up my elementary education was when we all actually first really became friends, which was in middle school the following year. So Dave Rivas, I don't know, is Dave still here? Dave? Oh yeah, Dave, okay. So he coined the phrase here of the Glenwood Knuckleheads, which was the group that we all hung out with in the neighborhood here. And it consisted of, and I want to give a shout out to everybody I can here. So, of course, George, Denise, Josh, Jack, Rivas, Michelle Lucas, Corinne, Bauer, the Jurises, the Olsons, the Pattersons, the Shabais, Paul Wadovich, Phil Earls, Stacy, Tommy Forbes, Chuck Gabriel, Becky Schrager, Zach, and Nick Sitches, Tara Zakula, AJ, and Nick. Did I forget anybody, Dave?
No, you got it.
I got them all. Thanks. Alright, so that's everybody lived here, but I think that's just about everyone, so hopefully I didn't miss out on anybody. If you happen to watch this, I apologize. Once George and I began to hang out more and more, I discovered that George and I had many of the same interests. Matter of fact, if you were looking at the tables here, you saw some of his collectibles. Him and I both enjoyed collecting Star Wars toys, and we both enjoyed dressing up as Batman and Robin when we were kids. In fact, we would always pretend to be Batman and Robin. You know, we'd wear homemade capes and masks and run around the house chasing each other. I think we probably thought Josh and Jack were like the Joker and the Penguin. I think they many times. I can't remember. Now, and for the record, I occasionally let George be Batman, but once in a while. Now, if you remember, if you ever watched the old Batman TV show in the 60s, you'll remember that Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson, when they would change into their superhero outfits, they would first push a secret button on the desk, and then the sliding glass door would open, or the sliding door would open. They'd ride down these fire poles and get to the basement. And when they got to the basement, the Batcave, I should say, they were in their Batman and Robin outfits. From the age of 10 or so, George and I would always bug my dad to actually build us fire poles from my closet in my bedroom, which is on the 3rd floor, all the way down to the basement. So we never stopped bugging him about that. Now to this day, I actually had some house plans drawn up that actually had the secret button, the sliding door, and the fire poles that would go all the way from the top down to the bottom. And unfortunately, it never came to fruition just yet. I was hoping one day I could surprise him. But unfortunately, you know, he's never going to get to see that. But just for the record, you know, I had the idea, so it never left. It was in there. All right, so everyone knows how friendly George was. Even if you just met him for the first time, or if you've known him for many years, you know, he made you feel like you've known him forever. And again, he had over 1,200 friends, and that's no joke. On Facebook, if you look, he's got over 1,200 friends. Crazy. He knew everyone, and everyone knew him. One thing that I really admired about him, if you're friends with him on Facebook, you'll know that every single one of your birthdays, he always sends you a birthday request. Am I right? A birthday hello. Always. Which brings me to a certain character trait of George. As you all know, he had a very convincing way about him. In my travels interacting with thousands and thousands of salespeople from all over the world, I can tell you that George was the most natural salesperson I had ever met. True story. He had a natural raw talent for telling people what they needed to hear, and in order to get them to trust him or do what he wanted or needed. You guys laugh because you know it's true. Now, he had a real knack for reading people, and he could tell when somebody wasn't really being truthful with him. Although he was an excellent nurse, I take nothing away from his nursing abilities. He has saved countless of lives, countless number. He could have made a mint in sales because he could talk his way in or out of any situation. To explain what I'm describing, let me share with you a short story of how skilled he was with the gift of gab. About 8 years ago, I booked a Hawaiian vacation for me and my travel partner. Oh, is that cause extended? There we go. Now, if anyone has ever booked any kind of trip online, you'll know that most prepaid vacations are non-refundable. Now, as you probably have guessed by this point, unfortunately, we were not able to go on this trip as I was in the process of switching jobs at the time. And for a week, I had been trying to get my money back. About 30 days before the trip, I had talked to countless customer service agents and their supervisors. No luck getting a refund for the $4,000 that we had paid in advance. Enter one Gojko Blecic. When I told him about the situation, he always said, which was simply, "Don't worry, Sal, watch and learn." Now, I knew he was good from past experiences, like the time he returned my Nintendo Game Boy to Toys R Us without a receipt, and he got all cash back. So I knew he was good, but no way was he going to be that good. I mean, the terms and conditions were black and white, clear as day in that ironclad contract. There was no way. Well, 20 minutes later, I got an email from my credit card company that said the charges have been fully refunded. I don't know what he did or what he said. I didn't care. That was the day I learned to never doubt the powers of George Blecic. He was like a superhero, and his superpower was bending his will on corporate return policies. He was so confident on the phone. He had charisma that was off the chart, whether it was a sob story, the nice guy approach, or my favorite, the angry Serb approach. He was amazing to watch him work, and when he put his mind to it, there was no stopping him. He could refund for anything, and battling for refunds was like a major league sport to him. And he was the greatest of all time. Now, you may be thinking to yourself after that story that the character trait I was describing was his uncanny knack for working the system. However, that is only part of the story. What I want you to take away with is what always happened afterwards. Whether it was the monster refund I spoke to about the trip or the smaller type refund from Toys R Us, he never once asked for a cut, a commission, or a favor in return. All he did was say, "Oh, Sal." Another one bites the dust. Seriously. He was the most generous, giving person I knew, and he loved doing things like that for the people that he knew needed it. Speaking of what George loved, besides doing the things that I just mentioned, he loved more than anything his 3 daughters, Nadia, Lena, Stella. He loves his mom. He loves Tata. To the truth, Denise and Zorka. Loved his partner, Jill. Where's Jill? He loved her parents, extended family. He loved my parents, Nancy, Don, Patty, Marty. He loved his colleagues. He loved to play the slots. He loved being on Facebook. He loved his sweets and his candy. And he, of course, loved each and every one of his friends. However, what he loved most was to be loved. Let me tell you a story. When we were growing up through elementary, middle, and all through high school, what George loved the most was trying to get a girlfriend. Like I said, he wanted to be loved, and he was, for lack of a better word, a girl crazy. He had a crush on so many different girls, hoping that one of them would like him in return. Come to think of it, I can actually say that he had a crush on just about every girl in our school at one point or another. And that, my friends, is a fact. Josh, you can back me up, Alex. You know about that. Now here's where it gets good. Our dear friend from high school, Lisa Sopko, messaged me the other day after learning of the tragic news. Unfortunately, Lisa couldn't be here today, but I asked her if I could share her story that she shared with me about the time George approached her while in the 7th grade. George came up to Lisa, held his hand out, and asked Lisa to close her eyes. And when she opened them, George was holding a small, nicely wrapped present with her name on it. Once Lisa opened the gift, she discovered it was a perfume called Exclamation. Does anybody remember that from the 90s? Anybody still wearing it? Yeah. Now, as the day went on and word got around school, Lisa, as it turns out, was not the only apple of George's eye. No. As was discovered, George ended up purchasing a total of 13 bottles of Exclamation. Proceeded to have them all gift wrapped, because come to find out, all the girls in school George had a crush on received the exact same neatly wrapped present with a little bow on top. Now, if I do say so myself, that is why I call playing the odds. Nice work, Sal. Nice work, everybody. All right, which reminds me, I need to get back to the nickname and why we called each other Sal. Why the word Sal? It really is the silliest thing once you know the story. It's almost better to keep it a mystery, but I think I'll spill the beans finally. Timeline-wise, we started calling each other Sal in the 9th grade. Now, for those of you here from our high school, if there's a couple, 2 or 3 of you left, you'll remember that George had his driver's license and owned car in the 8th grade. This was the best thing ever because we could go wherever we wanted, when we wanted, didn't matter. Now, whenever we go out to eat, George always ordered a salad. Even back in the day, he would always try to eat super healthy. One day after school, he drove us to the Shoney's Buffet, which is actually just right around the corner from here. It used to be, I think it's closed down now. I don't know, right? It's long gone. Went to the Shoney's Buffet, which is located here in Maryville, and we ordered a buffet for dinner, or whatever it was. And right off the bat, George got a salad, as he usually would. Now, at the time, I didn't really like salad so much, but I said to him, because I always like to pick on him, I said, George, you love salad so much, your nickname should be Salad. He then responded, and I quote, "I'm not a Sal, you're a Sal," which made absolutely no sense at the time, but I suppose that's exactly how the name started. And a moment passed without any thought. Now, as time went on, however, every time he would eat a salad in front of me, I would always say, "You're such a Sal." And somehow the name just stuck, and from that point on, I started calling him Sal to have a little fun with him whenever I could, and then he would always keep calling me Sal back, I think in an effort to have me stop calling him Sal. Now, I don't understand why his brain originally shortened the word salad to Sal. Maybe he just didn't hear me say salad. Maybe he was too busy focused on eating it. I don't know. I couldn't even try to understand the way that his brain worked. But from that moment in time, the two-headed baby known as Sal was born. Once the name stuck for both of us, as you can imagine, this was a very strange and confusing time for all of our friends and family. Having us call each other Sal in front of each other seemed a little odd, but it just became the norm over time. And even just to the day that he passed a few days ago, One of the last text messages I got from him said, "Oh, Sam." That was it. Now the funny part, at least I think it's funny, hopefully you'll find it funny, but I don't think Jill and Nadia and Lena and Isabella think it's that funny. But they'll be the first ones to tell you just how annoying and obnoxious we were with it. Every time we would call each other or FaceTime each other, and whoever called the other person, the first person who would call, the other person would say, "Oh, Sal!" super loud. It's kind of just the way it always went. And we talked for like an excess of 3 or 4 times a day, which was completely abnormal, for sure. But like I said, for the record though, I always said it way louder to try to purposely be more obnoxious than he would be. But what was awesome was when the girls or Jill wasn't around and he was in the car or just by himself, he would yell really loud too. Okay. In closing, there's not much more I can really say. I think we all know from our time with him that he was a great coworker, the best dad, son, brother, partner, a friend, a person could be. We've lost someone that we love, and it hurts. But even though he's gone, he'll remain in our lives forever, comforting us, making us laugh, and watching over us. Goodbye, my friends. Thank you.